Welcome to the Fright Lab. I'm Lucas Yoakum. And it is day 4 of spooky season, October 4th, 2025. We're going to be doing yet another fun-sized sort of episode, just a quick bite into a horror movie that I think you should watch, if not this spooky season, sometime very, very soon. And tonight, we're talking about a movie I've been meaning to watch for a while that had somehow slid through my grasp, but, well, what can I say? I broke down, watched it today, and man, am I glad I did. That movie is a little Canadian joint called Pontypool. Now, I'm going to do my best in the next possible few minutes to, not spoil this movie if I can. As someone who's done a small amount of, voice work in my life, I really like the idea of a movie that is so reliant on just a story being told without a lot of visuals. And Pontypool is one of those films. I want to liken it to something like War of the Worlds, but that's not quite right. I don't mean the plot of War of the Worlds, and not to be confused with the apparently dreadful Ice Cube War of the Worlds, but just the original radio broadcast, the much fabled radio broadcast that allegedly drove people mad. It evokes that in a sense, but it's not that really. It is the story of a Canadian shock-jock who has just walked into the weirdest, worst workday of his entire life. Just absolutely bizarre. And I am not gonna lie, I loved this movie. I had so much fun watching this. It's not even funny. If you like it weird, it is a solid choice. It's dark, refreshingly so. In a time when horror movies are getting their darkness back, I feel like this was kind of a precursor of a lot of that stuff. I believe it came out in 2008. It reminds me very strongly of a film I watched earlier this year, kind of towards the beginning of 2025, called Savage Land, which I'm definitely going to be covering sometime in the next few days, probably within the next week. Movie I really enjoyed. I feel like it would be a super bummer of a double feature, but probably worth checking out and doing anyway. So yeah, Pontypool. It's a very weird movie in a very smart way. There was a couple of sections where I felt like I was stumbling into a philosophy lecture or trying to read a psychology book without having done any of the prerequisite work to understand what's going on. Again, I can't talk about the plot in any way without ruining it. Suffice it to say, this shock-jock is discovering that maybe words are a little more dangerous than he realizes, and he and his incredibly skeletal crew of a production team they are in the thick of it on a cold winter day. There is something about this movie that I think I really appreciated more than anything is that it is artful. Not just its premise, which is admittedly pretty high concept, but the way it's presented in this very kind of compact way. It's another kind of bottle episode, but it's a bottle episode that kind of transcends walls because it's not about the space it's in. I know that doesn't help. It's a paranoid and kind of claustrophobic film, but it's visually really striking. You wouldn't think that what amounts to the basement studio of a small town radio station could be shot in an artful way, but it's actually really beautiful. Apparently, and I didn't know this when I first started watching it, Pontypool is based upon a book called Pontypool Changes Everything. Has anyone in our audience read this book? And if so, should I give it a read? It strikes me as the sort of thing that I would really glom onto really well. So, one thing that I love about horror is that it is such a multifaceted jewel of a genre. It is one of those things that can talk about everything and nothing. I was saying about The Autopsy of Jane Doe a couple episodes back that it is a movie that is very, very scary, but it's not trying to make a social message. But it's not a quote unquote vibes-based horror film like Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is more about an aesthetic and a space and more about a feeling it's trying to evoke than a specific story. What I will say about Pontypool is that it is telling a very definite story about the power of words and the power of language, which, for those who are listening to the show, you might guess that the power of words and the power of language is something that means a lot to me. I feel like we almost have this ability with our language to kind of cast a spell, don't we? We have this ability to evoke and to change and to cause changes within ourselves and with others. And that's a pretty heavy responsibility for those of us to carry. I think most people, if they were asked, do you want the power to change the world, would probably say yes, but maybe they've never thought about what that might entail. So, as someone who has a penchant for words, I will tell you that Pontypool is the sort of film that feels shockingly modern, despite being made something like 17 years ago. It is a film that feels like it is very, very appropriate even now, maybe now more than ever, but without ever beating you over the head with a specific message. I don't know that it's telling a social story per se, but it's definitely telling a story, isn't it? So, Pontypool. Should you watch it? Yes, you should. But I say that you should watch it if you like it very, very weird and very, very heady. I don't know that that's going to be everyone's cup of tea. It was definitely for mine. So, this movie has a cult following, and rightly so. If you like more quote-unquote cult horror films, this is definitely for you. And I feel like it lives to the hype. I'm kind of kicking myself for not having watched this movie earlier. So, if you're looking for something interesting tonight, Pontypool, I believe you can find it on Shudder. And I want to ask you all a very important question. What do you think? Is this a vein of horror films that should be followed up more? Does it fit in with the overall vibe of a spooky season? I think it does. And if you think it does, you should let us know. You can always reach out to us at thefrightlabpodcast@gmail.com. We can be found on all social media and most platforms. Just look for The Fright Lab. You'll find us. So with that, I'm going to get on with my night. I have the first of many kind of spooky events going on tonight. I'm deeply looking forward to it, and I'm sure you've got things going on too, which means we have to let you go for now. And that means that I have to tell you something important. The Fright Lab is written and researched by me, Lucas Yoakum, and it is produced and engineered and co-hosted by the one and only Joseph Wren. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all again very, very soon. Enjoy your spooky season.